How's that for a dramatic opening? This is Gyruss on the NES. This came out in 1988, 5 years after the arcade hit. You know, I remember a friend of mine in 3rd grade had a NES when it was pretty new, and Gyruss wasn't out for it at that time. You know, he wanted to show me things like Super Mario Brothers, but I wanted to play Gyruss, man. So we'd always boot up the Atari 2600 Gyruss, which, you know, was a bit off-key, but it played well enough. If I had seen this back in the day, I would have just flipped. And, you know, this isn't just a direct port of Gyruss. They add all kinds of mini-bosses and stuff like that. They changed it up a little bit more than the arcade version. I don't really get this choice of music for the mini-boss, though. This sounds like Ninja Gaiden, where, you know, the original Gyruss music was Toccata and Fugue in D minor by Bach. So yeah, the boss music in NES Gyruss is a bit out of place, but you know what? I forgive it because the extra content other than that is really awesome. I mean, they could have just ported the original and called it a day. My one complaint is the bosses and mid-bosses do get reused quite a bit. Upon defeating a boss, you are presented with a chance stage, which is like the challenging stages in Galaga. In fact, Gyruss is pretty much a Galaga ripoff. I mean, it's basically what happens when you take Galaga and you wrap it into a tube. I still love it though, because hey, what's not to like about Galaga? It's a classic. Fans of the arcade original might also notice that in this version you have a super shot that can go through shields and stuff like that, where, you know, you didn't have that in the original version. I have to say that, in general, NES is kind of undervalued as a pre-crash system. You know, we forget that the NES came out in 1983 over in Japan and was kind of competing with the likes of the Sega SG-1000, which was basically a ColecoVision clone. I don't think I have to mention that the NES pretty much blew that thing out of the water. But here's my point, the hardware was really made to run arcade games from that era. And it really excels at that. I mean, in fact, the NES has great versions of games like the original Mario Brothers, or Donkey Kong, or Elevator Action, or Clu-Clu Land, or, you know, Ice Climber. I mean, the list goes on. Somehow, we remember the NES for later games like Double Dragon, but often forget that the NES was great at playing these original games. And you know what? The more stuff you add to a NES game, the more it just turns into a flickery mess. So it's great to see these older games that run, you know, well within the constraints of the NES system. And, you know, even Gyruss pushes it a little bit. There's a little bit of flicker every now and then, a little bit of slowdown every now and then. It's not bad, but it is present. Over here you can see that they reuse the mini-bosses over and over. You know, the second level of every stage is the same boss. Fortunately, they're always introducing new grunt enemies. For instance, these amoeba dudes. And no, that's not supposed to happen. You know, the first time I went to record this, my cartridge didn't really make good contact with the NES pins, and this happened. And so I had to play it all over again from the beginning, which brings me to my next beef with NES Gyruss. It ramps up really slowly. You know, the arcade one ramps up very quickly, of course, because it's an arcade game. So does the Atari one. This takes a while to get going, and it's not really an issue if you've got an afternoon to kill to play Gyruss. Just be aware that once you hit that start button, you're going to be parked in front of your TV for a while. So that's Gyruss on the NES, a really respectable port of an arcade classic. Okay, well, be sure to subscribe, and I'll catch you next time.